What is going on, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of Money with Manny 101. On this episode, we are going to cover Home Buying 101. This is going to be probably a longer video than I normally do, just because of the intricacies of it. Now, instead of trying to fit it all in one video, what I'm going to do is essentially break it up and just give you the overview right now, and then go into breaking down the FHA, breaking down the conventional, and then breaking down the VA loan in individual videos, and then also breaking down the home buying process itself in detail in another video. Now, in terms of credibility, it's very easy. I've purchased 2 homes, one using the FHA loan and one using the VA loan. I am a veteran, so that was one of the benefits I was able to use. In terms of diving right into it, FHA versus conventional versus VA, which one to use? If you're not a veteran, you cannot use the VA loan unless your late husband who passed away at war, then you could actually use that eligibility as well. FHA, a lot of people call it the first time home buyer loan. It's not really that, although that is one of the requirements. It's just a government backed loan. Essentially, the best thing about it is that you really need little to no money down to close. Now, when talking about closing, the money you put down is a very small portion of what you need or what your closing costs will be. There's different things that come into play, like taxes, PMI, etc., etc. Now, the FHA loan is the one that I used to buy my first home, and it was we put down the lowest amount possible. Obviously, we're right out of college, 3.5%. The minimum credit score you can have is a 500 to 580. You need to put down 10%. But once you hit that 580 credit score, you can put down as little as 3.5%. Now, just because the FHA allows a 580 or 580 and below does not mean that the bank will want to sign those. A lot of the banks don't even consider you unless you have a 620. So although the 580, you could pretty much still buy a house with it depending on the lender, the interest rate is going to be ridiculous, and some of the fees that come along with having a lower credit score is going to be out of this world. So I highly recommend working on your credit before deciding to go with the FHA loan. Conventional, last thing FHA loan has is something called private mortgage insurance, or PMI. PMI, that car is broken. All right, so PMI essentially is the insurance that covers the bank if on your loan if you end up defaulting on the loan. So PMI with FHA, you have the upfront PMI or MIP, I think it's called, that you pay at close, and then you also have the month to month, which makes your payment being more. So for my FHA loan, for example, my mortgage was only supposed to be around 1,020 maybe when we closed, but because of the PMI, my mortgage payments ended up being 1,218. So it's something like that. On a monthly basis, you'll pay, depending on the credit you went into, around between $100 to $300 extra just for private mortgage insurance. So moving on to conventional loan, 20% down is normally what you have to go with. If you have higher credit scores, usually you could go as low as 5% down, but then that tacks on more fees as well. The higher the credit, the better the interest rate in all 3 of these loans. 620 is the minimum you need to take a conventional loan, and that is a bank-backed loan. It's the same as an FHA, except they require more down and they don't go into as many details because you're normally more credible. There's no PMI that comes along with it unless you decide to go less than the 20% that's required. Again, these percentages essentially just mean what your debt to income ratio needs to be after you add the estimated monthly mortgage payment. So these are the maximums that they will allow. So we'll go into the details of how debt to income ratio works a little bit lower here, and I'm probably gonna have to make a video for it itself, maybe a 5-minute clip on it. Going into the VA loan, which is my favorite, the one I just used, it requires 0 money down on the loan. You're still gonna have a closing cost because, like I said, closing costs has to do with more than just the money you're putting down towards a house. So $0 down. It does not have a PMI, and it is for veterans, and it is a government-backed loan as well. 60% debt to income ratio is what's required there. and a minimum of a 580 credit score. Now they're a lot more lenient when it comes to VA loans in terms of being pre-approved or being approved, because it is mostly backed by the government. When it comes to VA loans though, like I said, the interest rate luckily does not vary, because if it's your first house, there's a cap to what the interest rate could be. Second house, same thing, etc., etc. One of the misconceptions about the VA loan is that if you use it once, you can't use it again unless you sell the house, which is not true. You can actually, based on your calculations, if you talk to your agent, if it's somebody that knows, or the loan officer is somebody that knows about veterans or VA loans, they usually could explain to you how you could get a second house while still having that first house. Now, some of the important things I want you to know before going into buying a house: the payoff, what you want to pay off before you even consider buying a house. You want to pay off all your high interest debt, because at the end of the day, those are going to eat you alive. The last thing you want to do is be house poor. House poor means you work, and after you pay all your bills and your mortgage, you're broke. You have nothing for groceries, you have nothing for gas, and you're literally not even living paycheck to paycheck, because you have high interest debt and you have high monthly payment debt. The reason why you want to get rid of your high monthly payment debt is because that goes into your debt to income. Debt to income is just how much debt you have in a month that you pay. So your car loan, your student loans, your credit card minimum payments, divided by your gross income monthly. And that percentage essentially is where you see these caps. Now, normally all banks will try to keep you under 36%, including the new mortgage payment. So there's an estimated mortgage payment that usually comes out. Now, when they add that to your debt, if it's over 36%, you're usually more risky. The higher your credit, the more they'll take you seriously. So let's say you get to that 40, 45, 50% range, the higher your credit, the more likely they'll be okay to lend you the money. Now, if you get to that range and they don't want to lend you the money, what they'll normally do is knock down the size or the amount of house you can purchase. That way you can get into that 36, 40% or whatever acceptable range to decide based on your credit. Credit score. I know that 580, 620, 580, it sounds great, but the lower your credit score when approved for a house or you get your pre-approval, the highest the interest rate. Now, interest rate doesn't seem so serious when it's a car. Interest rate doesn't seem so serious when it's something smaller. But on a house, it's a 30 year loan. So that interest rate can eat up a lot of your money. You want to be as low as possible. So a 740 credit score is good when you're looking for credit, but a 760, they will literally bend over backwards to get you in a house, because they're guaranteed to make that money back and to make that interest back. So I recommend working on your credit for at least 2 years, because some of the things fall off after 2 years. That gives you time to save for the house. And then when you go into a house, you're not gonna be house poor. You could pay off your cars, pay off your credit cards, pay off all those high interest things and the high monthly payments. That way, when your debt to income ratio comes into play, you literally have maybe zero debt, and then just the house loan is gonna be the new debt that they have to calculate into your DTI. Okay, the next thing you wanna dive into is the home buying process. This right here is a beautiful home buying timeline that I've created. I didn't take it from anywhere. I just created it based on the 2 houses that I purchased and how it went. So the first thing you're gonna do is make a decision that you want to buy a house. This is a serious decision. You're on Zillow, you're looking at the house prices. The market is becoming a buyer's market, because right now it's a seller's market. So essentially, I could post my house today that I just bought for 140 and put it up for 175, and I'm guaranteed that somebody's gonna offer more than 175, and it'll be on my terms. I could say sell as is for 175, and it's probably gonna happen. Now you gotta wait for the buyer's market, or if you have a friend that's selling you something and they're gonna make something out of it, and you're getting something out of it because it's not going on the market and there's not gonna be a bidding war, etc., etc. So you make the decision and you're like, yeah, I want to buy a house. I'm looking at Zillow and these prices are beautiful. Next thing I do personally is get pre-qualification. I want to use the people that I trust, the people that I like, not the people that an agent recommends, maybe because they get a percentage out of the recommendation. I get my pre-qualification. So whatever bank you decide to do that with, do your research. Credit unions usually are better than big banks, but big banks do allow it, and most of the time after you close, they sell the loan to somebody else, a third party anyways. After you get your pre-qualification and you enter your information, pre-qualification usually just takes a credit. They're gonna run your credit. You're gonna put how much income you make yearly. It's really easy to get pre-qualified. And then you get yourself an agent. Now the agent, what you're using the agent for is so that you don't get robbed while looking for a house. Don't try to buy a house by yourself and think that you're an expert. Make sure you have an agent to do the checks and balances. Make sure that you're not getting robbed and you're not signing terms that you're not gonna like, because there's a lot of terms that happen that you won't understand at first. My first home buying process, I did more research while buying the home than I've ever done, because I didn't want to get myself into $200,000 worth of debt that I could never afford. You know what I mean? So the agent's gonna be your best friend, the person that you're gonna talk to the most, the person that's gonna understand what kind of house you want, what kind of house you're looking for, etc., etc. And he's gonna guide you in terms of what kind of house you want to get into, like who you should make an offer to, and if this is a house you like, this is the next step. This is the paperwork. I'll type up the paperwork. I'll do this. When you're on the buying side, there's a lot more work for the agent than the seller side. Like I'm selling my home in PA right now. I don't even need an agent because the buying agent has to do most of the work. Next thing you do is you find a house and you make an offer. So you're with your agent. They tour you on different houses. You find a house that you really like, and it's a buyer's market. So there's no competition. You're like, hey, I like this house. These are my terms. I have a FHA loan, conventional loan, VA loan, whatever it is. I'm gonna put this much down. I have $1,000 in earnest money, or money that I'm gonna pay up front to let you know that I'm serious. And then we have a 10-day period to do the inspections, whatever it might be. So you make an offer, and the seller is like, wow, I haven't gotten an offer in 30 days, so this is a good offer. I'll take it. They're paying ask price. I'll take it. So now you're under contract. Once you're under contract, the ball gets rolling. It normally takes 30 to 45 days from going under contract to closing, because this is where everything happens. The first 10 days, you got to get these inspections in: the pest inspection, the paint inspection, the radon inspection, the state or city inspection. All these inspections that you never heard of will pop up that you have to do within the first 10 days, because after those first 10 days, if you don't do it, you can't pull out of the deal, or you'll lose your earnest money. So you do these inspections, everything looks good, you find some fixes, the buyer or the seller's like, oh, I'm finally about to sell my house, I'll fix them for $1,000, I'm gonna make like $20,000, whatever it might be. So once you're under contract, everything's good, you get past the 10-day period, and at the same time, the bank is doing what's called the underwriting. They're looking at your last 3 years of taxes, how much you made in the last 3 years, how long you've held your job. It has to be more than 6 months. The fact that your job security is there, so you're gonna have to keep working. FHA requires you to live in the house for 1 or 2 years. VA loan requires you to live in the house for a minimum of 24 months before you can move, whatever it might be, unless you get orders, because the VA's veterans. But they have all these requirements. Conventional, you could do whatever. You could buy it, rent it out right away. You could buy it, sell it right away, whatever it might be. But FHA and VA loan have different, because they're government backed, and they're supposed to be for the less fortunate that can't really afford things, but they want to afford a house. So now they're looking at everything: your pay stubs, the fact that you won't get fired the day after you buy the house, because these are heavier loans. They're loaning you most times over 100,000, 6 figures, that you're saying you're gonna pay back in 30 years. So how do they know you're gonna maintain a 30-year job and be able to pay them back without defaulting? Another thing is you can't have bankruptcies within the last 2 years. For most of these, it's 2-3 years on some of them. You can't have short sales, etc., etc. So with that being said, underwriting is the deepest, most, you're gonna feel like the bank does not want to give you the money. They don't. They want to make sure that they give the money to the people that deserve it or can pay them back. They don't care if you deserve it. They care that you can pay them back, and that you're legitimate. For example, my VA loan, I had to come up with $12,000. I had zero down closing, but I had to come up with $12,000 to fix another issue that I was having that popped up. For the first house that we got, we had to I took out a loan right before it, so we had to figure out how to get somebody to loan us the closing money, or not even loan us, to gift us the closing money. And then after we close, then we could pay them back with the money that we actually saved to close. Because of the simple fact that the bank or the underwriting couldn't figure out what money we had saved and what money came from the loan. So these are things that are gonna happen. These are things that are gonna pop. So that's why I say give yourself a year or two before you decide to buy, to get your stuff in order. Start saving, whether the money that you're saving for the house has to go into a different bank, whatever it might be, do it. And then you get to the close. So at this point, you feel like the bank has taken you on a date to McDonald's, and now they're expecting everything from you. So essentially the closing time is when you finally get to sign the paper, and you're not a homeowner yet because it has to go to the title company, and the title has to send it to the state so that they can do a title transfer, whatever it might be. So you're at close, you're happy, you found out that your net worth is in the negatives, so you stop making fun of the rapper that's net worth is $250,000 when he's been rapping for 10 years. Because half of the time, unless you're debt free and paid off your house, your net worth is in the negatives. So you find out that you're not as rich as you thought you were, and but the bank said they could give you this house. So you sign the papers, you get your closing disclosure. Closing disclosure will break down everything down to the penny. How much you needed to close, how much loan you're taking, how much your monthly payments are gonna be, what's going to the person that's closing, how much they're paying to close, etc., etc. And at this point, you're essentially home free. The only thing that could happen wrong is if the title company that you're signing with loses your paperwork or burn it or something. But at this point, you're home free and you're now a homeowner. Once that first, I don't feel like a homeowner until I make the first mortgage payment, because half of the time, the bank that you close with will sell your loan to another bank that specializes in home loans. Like for example, when I bought my first house, I closed with a certain bank that I don't even know the name of, and they sold my loan to Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper started contacting me, and I had to call my agent like, who's Mr. Cooper and why are they saying they have my loan? So you have to understand that that's just how the mortgage stuff works. But now you're a homeowner, and the biggest lie that happens is they tell you that your rent or your mortgage is steady and it won't go up. This is a lie. Taxes vary, your escrow account vary. Escrow is essentially just the account that you pay into that is not the mortgage or the interest. It is for taxes, it is for PMI, it is for insurance, for the house, etc., etc. All those go into escrow. Escrow is just a fancy name for the bucket that is not your mortgage. The mortgage portion of it is your interest and the principal payment. The escrow portion of it is everything else that you have to pay to keep the house without getting it foreclosed, or without the government coming to take it away from you or anything like that. So with that being said, that is my very short, long video on Home Buying 101. I'm going to dive into the FHA, I'm going to dive into the conventional, and I'm going to dive into the VA loan in separate videos. I'm also going to dive into escrow, debt to income, and essentially why you need to do these two things. I don't really think I need to make a video on this. This is kind of self-explanatory. I have different videos that I'm going to tag above that has to do with these things, like paying off debt and how to do it. So with all that being said, if you like the content, make sure you like, share, comment, and help me out with all these YouTube algorithms so that we can blow up and help people be somebody. Peace.